Hello, coaches! Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better from Eduro Learning. Today I'm chatting with Diana Beabout, Innovation Coach at American International School of Guangzhou in China. Diana is also the Academy Mentor for our Eduro Learning, the Coach Microcredential, and we love talking about coaching whenever we get the chance. Side note, our third cohort of the Coach Microcredential starts soon, and this conversation is a great preview to why you might be interested in joining us. Instructional coaches in international schools, this episode is for you. Our conversation today is about the gap that seems to happen often in international schools, specifically for instructional coaches. The gap between the expectations of and the support for the coaching role. This conversation was actually prompted by a previous discussion about professional development opportunities for coaches, both new and experienced coaches, and we dig even deeper today. If you are currently a coach in an international school, let us know what opportunities your school provided for your professional growth when you were hired. And if you want to be a coach in an international school, this conversation will highlight the critical importance of professional development to help you excel in your role.
If you're new here, welcome. My name is Clint Hamada.
And my name is Kim Cafino, and we're your hosts for this series. Between the two of us, we have almost 40 years of coaching experience in schools around the world, and we want to help you coach better.
So whether you're already a coach or you're just getting started, we're passionate about helping you take that next step in your coaching journey by sharing thoughtful, professional conversations about coaching and learning with experts from around the world.
And you might notice that Clint and I are never in the same room. That's because I live in Bangkok and Clint lives in Beijing. But we are so excited to get together every week to share and discuss how we can all coach better together.
If you enjoy any part of this episode, please make sure you give it the old thumbs up. It really does help us to know what you want to hear more about. Also, subscribe to the channel so you can see all of the coaching videos and click on the notifications bell so you know as soon as each video gets posted.
Please make sure to watch all the way to the end. We've got some great opportunities for your professional learning that we think you'll love. Let's get started. All right, welcome back to another episode of Coach Better from Eduro Learning. I am here today with Diana Beabout, my co-mentor for the Coach Microcredential program. And I'm super excited to be here with you, Diana. I feel like everyone knows who you are, but just in case they don't, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your education and coaching background?
Sure. I'm currently an innovation coach at American International School of Guangzhou in China. I am also, as Kim mentioned, a mentor for the Coach Microcredential for Eduro Learning. I've also facilitated the course from coaching from theory to practice. I am a graduate of the COACHBETTER program and also have facilitated a cohort just recently as well. In about my 22nd year of teaching, came from the States, spent about 16 years teaching in the United States, a classroom teacher, but also a mentor and instructional coach during that time as well. Overseas, I've been predominantly working in educational technology and innovation, coaching roles and that, and just continuing to develop, continuing to learn along the way, supporting other coaches, other teachers, and having some great coaches and mentors myself.
And we've had a number of conversations about coaching on this podcast and just in person and as part of the Coach Microcredential. And during those various conversations, you mentioned a really important point, I think, and that's kind of what prompted this conversation. You mentioned that there's a real gap in professional development for coaches, and particularly in international schools. What makes you say that?
So when I was in the States, I was an instructional coach and got some coaching in mentoring matters. We had coaches for the coaches in the district I was working at. So I got a lot of support going in as a new coach in the district that I was working in, and got some very specific training around that. When I came overseas and I moved into a coaching role to school, they, based partly on my experience as an instructional coach, I moved into the role to support teachers in using technology in the classroom. And there were other coaches on the team. There was a lot of support with each other, but there wasn't, specific training or professional development around coaching. We focused on, do we know the technology, and can we show the teachers how to use this technology as well. But as wanting to always grow in my practice, I was really looking for some support in doing that. I went through the COTEL program, the Certificate of Educational Technology and Information Literacy, and it was a really great experience that also led to my role as an educational technology coach. And I wanted more, so I really had to go out there and search. And then when Kim, when you first offered the coaching from theory to practice, which was a 6-week course exploring coaching and going through a coaching cycle and doing a lot of reading and learning a lot more about coaching, that was really, it was something that I wasn't seeing out in the offerings that were there. I would go to conferences and the coaches would all get together, ed tech coaches particularly, and really like, oh, what are you doing? And we would share a lot, but there was never really a lot of sessions specifically about coaching. We tended to kind of get together in cohorts or at lunch or people we connected with through Twitter. Definitely Twitter and social media really built my professional learning network, and I got a lot of support that way. But as far as formal training, you really had to, a lot of us had to really look for it, and there just wasn't a lot of offerings. So when I did the Eduro learning course, and that was great, and then I started co-facilitating it with you, and then eventually taking that over, and then it led to, with Eduro, developing this microcredential, which I was very excited about participating in and facilitating, because as I said, I connected with a lot of coaches, and they were really looking for some kind of specific professional development on coaching. Now, some schools invested the time and the effort and the money, a lot of money in training coaches, like in cognitive coaching or in peer coaching and specific coaching models, which a lot of times they brought to their whole school. But to me, that seemed to be the exception to the rule, that these were, some different schools that they decided as a school we're going to train, administration and coaches, or a number of people at our school on a specific coaching strategies, and they invested the time and the money and made the effort to do that. But then I also met a lot of coaches who were maybe the only coach at their school. And so they're often moved into that role because they had been excelling in the classroom, but there wasn't any particular formal training for them. It was more, and I heard this from a lot of teachers, they'd never coached before. They were really good at using the technology in the classroom. The school would move them into this coaching position, but not particularly with any specific training on how to do that. And then, like I said, it just became this kind of cycle of meeting more and more coaches in that position, who were looking for, more support and more training in what they were doing, and really having to really kind of band together with other coaches through Twitter, or, meeting up with other coaches at conferences, but nothing really consistent.
You hit on so many points that resonate with me when you were sharing your own personal experience and all that you've seen and when you've talked to other coaches. And I'm going to try to pick out sections from everything that you said. And the first one that I thought was really interesting is when you were in the US and you had a coaching role, you mentioned that there were explicitly specific roles, coach of the coaches. And in my conversations that I've been having with COACHBETTER podcast guests, especially those that are in the US, they are all coaches of the coaches. But you don't hear about that in international schools. It's kind of this interesting dynamic that we have a lot of resources in international schools, but it's almost like we expect the people who are in these kind of nebulous roles to know how to manage themselves. But they would benefit from a coach just like a classroom teacher or a librarian or a counselor or an administrator benefits from a coach. So can you tell us a little bit about what that was like, having that coach who coached you, and what that PD was like in the US, just to give us a bit of a framework?
Sure. And when we talk about the US, we're often talking about a school district. So it's,
Yes.
It's a group of schools. The district I was in Colorado, it wasn't a huge district, but it was coaches elementary through high school. And we had two women who were the coaches of the coaches. One mostly dealt with elementary, the other with secondary. And we had different roles depending on the division level and that, but we had regularly scheduled at least once a month that we would all get together with very specific goals about coaching, and then also follow up. So the coaches of the coaches would then follow up with us individually and meet with us regularly. We used Mentoring Matters, which is it's a out of cognitive coaching. And so there's very specific recommendations and strategies to use. And we even had it was called a coaching mat that would kind of lead you through a coaching conversation and we would practice. We would meet as a group. We would also meet individually with the coaches of the coaches. So it was very organized and with very specific goals, a specific, method and strategy of doing that. But then differentiation based on our grade level. Whereas like the elementary, there's a lot of focus on reading, where I was at the high school level where it was mostly focused on general instructional practices and that. So it was, very organized, very, very intentional with the training that we and support and the expectations that we had.
I really appreciate the use of the word intentional and expectations, because I think that kind of leads me really nicely into the next question I wanted to ask you about, which is what happens in international schools. Is you described it perfectly. Most coaches that get their role in an international school, very often they will be hired because they're excelling at a certain area in their subject area. And then it's almost like they're expected to know how to coach other teachers with very little, like we said, intentional professional development and almost no clear expectations for what the role should look like. So if you were going to envision what that might look like in international schools, what do you think, what is the challenge that we're facing now, and how could we kind of solve it, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
I think I got into the educational technology part of this about 6-7 years ago. And even in the last, I've seen this shift. So I think, 10, 15 years ago, there are a lot of teachers moving into these positions specifically as tech integration. They would call them tech integrationists. So they were really there to show the teachers and the students how to use the technology. That has shifted. Even in the last 5-6 years, I've seen based on my own experience and the coaches and people that I talk to, that there's been this shift from these very specific, work on people using the technology. Now we have a lot more students and teachers who are a lot more experienced and open and comfortable in using the technology. So the shift has been, okay, now we need to make sure that the technology is being used, effectively and productively and for the right reasons and that. So there's been a shift, and you'll see that even when a group of us get together, we all do pretty much a lot of the same things, but we all have different job titles, which also there's not much consistency in that. So I think it's been a shift too. It's quite easy to say, the role of this teacher is to move into a coach to help integrate the technology. But the shift then to how is this impacting learning is a shift in really people have to have a view of, as an instructional coach in a lot of ways and a learning coach. And so you'll see that names have shifted as far as the job titles and that. So I think there's got to be flexibility based on what the school needs and what the teachers need and what the students need. But it's really getting more into how does this fit into the instructional, into the curriculum, into the teaching and learning in that way. It's not this kind of extra, this person's going to come in and show me how to use, Google Drive. This is really, it's that shift as well. So I think that has been a challenge, I think, in a lot of ways for schools, is that the job has changed as well. So how do you define that? And I've worked with a lot of coaches, through through Eduro Learning, through mentoring, and just talking with other coaches, is that they're in some cases they're having to write their own job descriptions. And when I talk to them, well, base it on what do the teachers and the students need, and be ready for that to change over time.
Yeah, you hit on so many more good points in that section too. And I think your point about the job title changing and the expectations changing along with it. But I think the perception of what the job is, particularly among teaching staff, has kind of remained a bit consistent, right? So there's a tension there too, even the coaches are advocating for the change in their job title and their job actions because that's the trends that they see, because they're part of the same conversations that we're talking about. And admin often will look to coaches and say, okay, you're the expert in your area. I trust you. Let's move forward on that path.
Right.
But then the disconnect between what the coaches and the admin are thinking and what the teachers are thinking is often a tension for coaches as well. And then there's the tension, like you mentioned before, about, maybe I was great at using technology in my own classroom, but then when I'm expected to be an instructional leader, just by virtue of the fact that technology and innovation kind of go hand in hand, I don't think there's anything wrong with recognizing and providing appropriate professional development to support that person to grow into that role. Because I think I was in that exact situation. I was put in a coaching role. I mean, I'm sure I advocated for it. If I look back and I take a moment to stop and pause, I'm sure I advocated for it because I feel really excited about that kind of stuff, and I always have. But I never had that kind of formal training, particularly that on-the-job training that you're talking about, a coach of the coaches. And I learned everything I learned through trial and error. And I think, that's a great way to learn. We learn a lot from failure. And I definitely think those lessons that I learned have stuck with me. But I think it doesn't always have to be that hard for everyone. We can make the whole process smoother if we support coaches in their own professional growth by providing training around being a coach.
Right. And particularly in educational technology, there's, of course, we're going to send you off to get training on certain technologies and that we want to be upskilled and that. But what about those other pieces that I think this really resonated with me because I did have that base as an instructional coach and had that specific training. And I feel, that has definitely helped, even though that was a long time ago, that has provided a good support for me. And like you said, and then the other things that I've just kind of picked them up along the way. Fortunately, you offered the coaching from theory to practice. So that was a 6 weeks of like, okay, I can really think about my coaching and really solidify strategies and my outlook on it. And then actually coaching other coaches, then I learned a lot doing that way. I sought out and really was fortunate to have some great mentors as well, both on site and through my interactions through my professional learning network. But I had to make the effort to do that. And I had to, and the school is great. I have very supportive schools. I have very supportive administrators and that, but it's really kind of it's about the perception, both in leadership and by the teachers of not just do I need to, upskill on the technology that I'm supporting, but I have to work on these other skills. We're going to talk about more what those would be of these things that it's not just about me knowing the technology. There's all these other strategies and skills that I need to have to make coaching successful. And they don't always come just naturally either.
Absolutely.
And I think some people, they do have a natural personality or experience that lends them to being more effective as a coach. But some of the stuff I taught, I've learned did not particularly become natural for me. It's now part of what I do because I explicitly learn these certain things, and now it's in my mind consciously, not just, oh, okay, that worked. So, or that that trial definitely went through a lot of trial and error. There's always going to be trial and error, but if you have some specific strategies or the way that you say things or the way that you approach things, I think it helps you to be more successful and feel more confident. And then the people that you're working with, it's definitely going to benefit as well.
Yeah, I think you raise another litany of great points there. And I think your point about there being specific strategies and skills that we can learn as coaches, that some people have some personality or habits that make certain aspects of those skills natural. But I think it's pretty rare that you would be a natural at all of the elements that make coaching successful. So what would be so cool is if there was an opportunity for coaches to identify what are some of those key skills, which ones are in, my green tick box that I can do no problem, which ones are the yellow that I've already kind of identified, these are things I know I need to work on, and which are the red that's like, oh, I never even thought about that warning sign, how did I not even realize I was doing those things? So that kind of self-identified professional growth, and then having someone to work through that process with them. I mean, that's what we want for our teachers. And so I find it really interesting, and here's my question coming at you now, is I wonder if there's a tension as coaches, because by many of the staff members, and we do have to be learning leaders and experts in our area of expertise, right? We're perceived oftentimes as being like experts and problem solvers, and yes, there's the coaching side of the role, but there's also this, like, you're knowledgeable in this area. So is there a tension? Is there a stress or an unwillingness sometimes of coaches, a reluctance to be vulnerable themselves to coaching because they themselves are the coach? Because we don't have this culture of coaching the coaches in international schools. That's like almost exposing the soft underbelly of coaching, right? Like that our coaches need coaching too.
Right. And I think you hit on that being vulnerable, and like, I don't know everything. And I am constantly learning. I will never feel like, okay, I got coaching down. But I think that idea of, like, you do, and some people, like we talked about, they move into the role because they're the experts on using the technology. And so the fact that it's like, oh, I was brought in to do this. So to be open to, like, I still need to develop my skills in that I have room to grow. In other areas, maybe, you can get the certifications, you can get go through the training on certain technologies and that, but then to be self-reflective. And I think that's, I've, observed in conversations I've had with different people that kind of, well, I'm the coach, and they, so I've got, sometimes there's a comparison between, like, with an athletic coach who is an expert in their field and everybody looks up to them, and pretty much, like, they're going to tell you how you need to get better in that. But in a role as, like you said, it's an instructional leader, or as an instructional, this is your role, that you're not the expert on everything, and that you may need to have training in some other areas to be effective in your job. So I think there's that kind of, I don't know if it's a humbleness or just that self-reflective that yes, I'm good at this, and I'm good at, as a teacher. As a teacher, you're a type of coach as well. But to move into this role with with staff and faculty and leadership and the school-wide role, just like I said, not a lot of us went in like, oh, I want to be an instructional coach. We get into that role because somebody noticed that we have certain skills or we have certain expertise. So we don't always have those. We haven't had that training to be a coach. People see potential. But then it's not always really developed through the coaching and coaching coaches as well, that we all have room to grow.
Yeah, I think that is a really important point, is we are often moved into or applied for roles because of the success that we've had in our previous role, oftentimes a classroom teacher role, right? Mm-hmm. Makes sense. We're talking about education. Mm-hmm. But then maybe even before we get into that role, we might not realize all of these other elements that we might need support in. So let's talk about that for a minute. Like, what are the areas that when you come out of the classroom and you're in a coaching role are like, oh, I didn't realize I had to work on that? Or, yeah, like, what are those moments? Because I can think of some for myself. Do you have any right now? And then I'll share mine too.
Sure. A huge part of the job is building relationships. And so, which is not just about being friendly and, that is part of it, of course, but also, how does that work, and how do we build relationships with everyone? I mean, one of my friends often, she points out, you work with everyone, and you're available for everyone. So how do you, with all these different personalities, how do you work with all these different people with different perspectives, different experiences, and how you approach that? And this is just really, even through conversations of like, okay, just the concept of, I'm going to have to approach different people different ways, and I have to, that type of thing. That there are structures, there's coaching cycles that you can use. There's a lot of those out there. You can find them easily, but what would work for you to kind of have structure to, and not just this like random, okay, I'm going to work with so-and-so, which happens. But is there a way to put in a structure so that our conversations and the work that we do is effective and productive? And that conversations, this is actually started doing workshops just on this topic, which again, I do not claim to be the expert. It's something that I think is a real key to coaching, is the way that what questions we ask and how do we listen well. Paraphrasing is I think that's an art in itself, paraphrasing and listening, and the types of what questions do you ask when, and I mean, that's a big thing out of like with cognitive coaching and mentoring matters that I had, is these different types. Are you trying to clarify? Are you trying to, what's your intent, which will inform the type of question you have, which that takes a lot of, it's kind of like you can have, like, you have to be ready for lots of different things to happen. And so the more training and tools that you have to do that, facilitating meetings, facilitating conversations. Sometimes, you need to be the, as a coach, helping people have conversations, not just the conversation between you and an individual teacher. Organizing professional development. Like if you're going to be doing training in that for the staff, how do you organize to roll out things? I did things with, how do you roll out certain technology or ideas? A lot of times you're kind of the middle person as far as like admin wants this to happen. And so your role is to how do you communicate that to staff, and how do you roll out what they need to know depending on the initiative, or if it's a piece of technology or an idea or that. So how do you organize how do you organize a workshop? I remember the first time I was asked to do a workshop, and it's like an hour. What am I going to do for, but fortunately I had people around me who coached me through that and gave me feedback on doing that. And, just policy. I have people that myself and other coaches that I've talked with and worked with, even one I'm mentoring right now, they're working on policy for their school, and, educational technology or digital citizenship policy. So how do you, these kind of really big picture things that people don't really think about, and then they might be pulled in. Well, you're the ed tech coach, so we need you to get your input on this, writing these policies for the school, which is like, that can be very intimidating. So how do you approach that? Data, how do you look at data as well? So there's, just from my experience and the coaches I talk to, all these other roles come up. It's not just about, supporting the teacher in the classroom to roll out this piece of technology, but there's all these other things that you can get either asked to do or becomes part of your role as well, that you can contribute to as well. It's been very like eye-opening. I've gotten, I get to see things from like the school level, like the big picture level. But then what kind of input do I give to that? And what kind of training and strategies do I need to help that to be effective?
You have like hit everything as you're talking. I'm like, she's taking all of the examples that I had. That's okay. That was an awesome list. And
right.
the one thing that you didn't say that I was thinking as you were talking is there's an additional tension added to all of these things that I was taking notes as you were talking, in that you are no longer a classroom teacher peer. You are still a peer because you're just a teacher. You're not a school leader in any way, maybe a peer leader in the fact that you might be more experienced in a certain subject area than others, but you are just a teacher. And so suddenly, as any other teacher in the school, you're being asked to be the lead on rolling out new initiatives, to organize logistics and professional development for full staff, to work on policy, to collect and analyze data that informs instruction for the entire school. These are big picture things that you are talking about that, last year I was only concerned about how I impacted my classroom. Now you are expecting me to be able to take that and scale it up to a whole school level with essentially no training. And I know that the coaching role is not an administrative role in most schools, but it's almost, and I know I'm putting a lot on coaching here, and it's not quite fair, but it's almost like saying, okay, now you're vice principal or you're dean of students or your MYP coordinator, and you've had zero training or professional growth opportunities because you're just kind of thrust into it, and no one, even those administrators who are advocating for you, don't always see or recognize all of those other layers that go with that job. So it really is, for most coaches in that first year, like, oh, there's a lot more than I thought.
Right. And particularly, I think, as teachers move into these coaching roles, that the first year or two may be a lot, like they're just trying to work with teachers. But as the role grows, and that's what I've seen happen, it's happened with myself, is moving into its leadership. And a lot of times, like, coaches won't say, well, I'm not a leader, I'm not admin. It's like, no, That's not about being admin. You are a leader in the school. And so, and sometimes it's not even so much about having, specific skills training. It's about having these conversations like, what does that mean to be a leader? And how can I be effective at it? And how can I approach it? Because again, I'm still an educator, and the teachers are my peers, but I have a role as a leader. So how does that affect how I conduct myself and how I look at things? And I'm, really, for me, I've been very self-conscious of it. Like, okay, I'm in this kind of role, like whole school role. So how is that going to affect how I work and interact with people? And that takes some self-reflection, which you need support. I think you need support for that. And I think like I said, I feel very fortunate. I've also sought it out as far as finding mentors and other coaches who have experience, or not just coaches, but I've worked with some leadership particularly in curriculum and that, who their training really, they were able to, because of their training, were able to support me and give me ideas of how to approach things as well. So I'm really approaching it, and more holistically, as you mentioned, like an instructional leader. And to me, it's also very, like, to be involved in all these different things can be very exciting, and you feel like you really have some input in what's happening in the school. But it's like I said, that doesn't all come naturally, and you need to have some support with that.
And I like your idea about approaching it holistically and looking at it as an instructional leader, because I think that is an area of opportunity for all coaches, right? To look at this as a big picture thing, as being part of the forward direction or forward momentum of the school that they work at, and being able to have that positive impact on school culture and student learning and teacher professional growth in all the ways that they think is powerful and valuable and useful and something that is exciting and inspiring to them. So I think everything that we're talking about, if you look at it through the right lens, is like very exciting and empowering and, huge opportunities for professional growth. And I think all of those things can be very well supported for the coach if the right structures are in place. And I think very few schools at this moment in time have the right structures. And I think that's really interesting, because just like you described, so many coaches that I talk to, just like we said, they get put in the position, but there's actually no professional development. So one of the reasons why we're here together, that you've mentioned so many times, is that we actually have that thing. We have a program designed for coaches, by coaches, facilitated by you and I, specifically designed to help individual coaches working in a cohort model meet whatever their goals are when they're looking at that green, yellow, red tick box, and they're thinking, what are the things I need support in? We are here to support them. And, kind of before we wrap up this call, let's talk a little bit about how we do that, because I think it's important for people to get that inside understanding of how this program works, because just like we were saying, when you come into the coaching role, it can be a big eye-opener when you finally get there and realize, oh, these are all the things that I'm expected to do, or these are all the things I recognize that now I have to do. It's kind of the same thing about the professional development for coaches. We don't always really realize what the opportunities are there within an option like the Eduro Learning, the Coach Microcredential. So do you want to start? I'll let you start highlighting some of the features of the program that you think are powerful or beneficial for coaches.
And we've had this conversation. I think this is what kind of led to this conversation that we're having today, is that, and we've talked about that. I wish I had something like this when I first started coaching. And that's why I'm so excited to be involved in it and to work with it. Because coaching coaches, like, you learn something, I learned, it helps me as well. But I think when you brought me in and asked me to facilitate and work with and mentor these coaches and work with other coaches, particularly we started with the Coaching from Theory to Practice, a 6-week course, which is awesome. And you all recognize we need more. We need, people are just like, yes, this is good, but I need more. Can we do a second, that type of thing. So I think I'm really proud of what particularly you and Chrissy have developed. And just like, we look at that, like there's different modules based on different areas that we've identified that is helpful for coaches, like digital citizenship, leadership. There's a Coaching from Theory to Practice module within that. And so what I found with the people that I have worked with and are working with now is that we have these different areas that we feel are really important for coaches to start addressing. And I think even if you looked at it, it's something that you could repeat, over and as people gain experience. So I think we have these areas of topics that we want to focus on, but then how does that apply to their to their situation. So each participant, they're going to approach it based on their current experience, their current position. We have people in different, some people are the only coach at their school, others do have other coaches, and some of them are experienced coaches, others are, this is their first year. I have a couple that's their first year as a coach. I even have one participant, first, new school, new role as a coach, and so we're adapting things to what that person needs at this time. And sometimes it's just that we need to they just need to have a conversation about how their week has been going. And if you have any kind of experience with cognitive coaching, that was another thing, is just understanding. Sometimes you're in the consultant role, with sometimes I move into that because I know they just want me to tell them, here's some ideas of what you should do. And then into that, collaboration, let's get some ideas together. And then coaching, where it's me listening, asking questions, facilitating their thinking as well. So as far as the micro-credential that we offer, we have, specific topics, but they're very adaptable based on the participant's situation. In that we have a order that we recommend doing things, but then I've had participants do things like, oh, we're looking at digital citizenship at our school, so I want to work on that module right now. So it's very adaptable, like I said, to what their needs are. Which, just like a coach, that's what we do as a coach. We want to find out what people need and what we can do to support them in that.
I really appreciate how you mentioned that this all started from that 6-week course, Coaching from Theory to Practice. And you're exactly right. Like, we got such great feedback and requests essentially for more, that's kind of where it grew out of. And so as you described, what we decided to do was build out other modules specifically focused on coaching, and particularly in international schools, but applies because we've had public school teachers in the US take it too. Basically building out all that coaching knowledge from the foundational aspect of, coaching stances like you were just describing, coaching cycles, understanding coaching language and coaching vocabulary, then understanding how to put coaching into practice, what it's like to actually work with someone. So we ask you to do that, partner with a classroom teacher and reflect on that entire experience within our forum, so we can all kind of benefit based on your experience. And then we build out from there into the leadership side of things, working with leadership, being a leader, working with parents, building that digital citizenship piece for your school. And any and all of that content can be totally customized based on the participant's needs, just like you described. And then the other piece, so basically what we've done is taken all of our best coaching resources and put them into one program. And then on top of that, we have the personal project, which is kind of that green, yellow, red light concept I've been coming back to during this call, is you as a coach decide what is your goal that you want to work on over this academic year that you want someone to coach you through the process of doing. So maybe it is bringing digital citizenship to the entire elementary school, which is what Nick did last year in his project. Or maybe it's bringing coaching as a concept to your school district, which is what Camlin and Jennifer did in my cohort last year. So taking a specific concrete goal and making it a goal for yourself, and then having all of that content to work through as you're building those skills, and then having the mentor of you or me alongside you over the course of the year to adjust and refine and, retarget and look for those opportunities. I think that's I don't know, I'm so excited about it. And I hate the fact that I'm like selling it right now, but I'm so excited about it. And I think it's exactly what coaches need. And I want to make sure they have that kind of window into what's going on, because so much of what happens in our private learning management system, which is, login protected, because we know we want them to have conversations that they can't have in public spaces. This is why we're not exclusively using Twitter for professional development, because maybe we need to have a private conversation. And this course allows you, or this program allows you to do that.
I agree. And like you talked about, we do build a community. So even, and it is in the learning management system, because I also agree, there's conversations as coaches that you have to talk about. I'm working with this difficult situation, and it's not something you particularly want out there on Twitter, because you're trying to process it. And that was a big thing too, is for me finding people that I have kind of have conversations of like, okay, this is really difficult, but I'm not going to go to the teacher's lounge and be like, oh my gosh,
yes.
So there's somebody there to do that. And so there is a community there of other coaches going through that. And we've really seen some of our participants connect with each other and really grow. I'm really proud of them. I think also they're doing things with what it's not just, oh, here, write a response to this journal article. It's like, what's happening in your school? What do you want to impact? What do you want to work on? What do you want to focus? And they're doing things that they're going to use in their job. So it's really great. Like with one of my participants is they developed this idea of expanding educational technology in the school, and just the confidence that she got, being able to, like, okay, I've got resources now and I've got a plan, and now I'm ready to go present it to the board. And it's like, 6 months earlier, I don't think she would have been prepared to do that. And now the confidence that she has, based on the fact that she developed her skills, and she developed her, she built her knowledge base and resources, and looked at examples, and we had these conversations, and she had people to bounce her ideas off, the confidence, and now she's just really like, I really want to make this happen. And even though she's done with the course, it's like, I continue to see her grow. And I think that she just needed, what we're doing too is, like I said, it's not like sending somebody out to external PD and then they come back and they don't have, which happens in so many other ways. People get sent out for external PD, or they bring somebody into the school for a week, and then what? We're providing them, like I said, this is what I love about this program, is we're providing them with what they need, where they are, both at their school and where they are as a coach, and then moving that forward.
And I also want to highlight, of course, just the opportunity to sit down and talk to you like this, like having the depth of the conversation that we're having now about coaching. This is what we do with our participants on a weekly or every other week basis. So anything that comes up, whether it's from the course material, or whether it's something that's happening in their coaching role in their school, or their classroom teaching role in their school as they're preparing to be a coach, we have these kinds of in-depth conversations with our participants on a regular basis. And I think that's also an element that is special, because you have an outside eye or an outside ear, someone who's not in your school, but who knows the role really well, so that we can give that kind of outside perspective on what's happening. And I don't know about your conversations, but a lot of mine are like, is this normal? This is what's happening in my school. Is this normal? Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I've seen that, or that's happened. This is how I dealt.
Yeah, has that happened to you? Like,
yes.
Oh, yeah, I have to be careful, because as a coach, it's like, I don't want to take over the conversation, but sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, well, this just happened to me last week. And
yes.
You make connections, like, oh yeah, I've been through that before. And I think that does help, that kind of like, yes, that just kind of like, these things can be tough. You'll work through it. I've been through it. And even, now I'm an experienced coach at a new school. This is my first year at my school. And so I can relate to like being new at a school, and it's, yeah. So to have somebody else who can tell them, yes, this is a very common experience in that. So, and also you brought up a point too, is not all our participants are currently coaches. We have teachers who are interested. And I think, for those that are familiar with the COTEL program, I think this came out of that as well, as we, with the COTEL, which you started with Jeff, is a lot of people went through that program, and then it was like, I want to do more. Yes. And so that's, this is how I love that I've kind of witnessed the growth of this, that people want to do more. And so they're like, I'm in a teaching role, but I want, currently, Nick, who has completed both COTEL and the Coach Microcredential, he is a classroom teacher, but now there's potential. He's got skills and he's got experience now that he's looking at, what's the future? What kind of role can I move into? And I think he's in his school, even he's taking on more and more leadership. He's still in the classroom, but he's taking on more and more leadership. So it's not just for people who are currently coaches. It can also be for people who this is something they're interested in expanding into.
Absolutely. I think we've really described all of the great elements of the program. I mean, I guess the only other thing that I know that my participants have explicitly expressed to me is that every week I send them a check-in email, and there's no pressure for them to respond, but the email always includes like a little update and some information from me, but also always includes a resource that I think is relevant for them. So not only are you getting everything, all of our best coaching content within the learning management system, not only are you getting a mentor to work all of that through and also address whatever else is going on in your classroom or coaching role, but we're checking in on a regular basis and sharing new and relevant resources and ideas and concepts that we are hearing about or thinking about. Because, I think in our case, we're a little bit mentors. We are supporting them in their professional growth. And there's a little bit of a difference between a mentor and a coach. And, sometimes I will say to my participants, okay, I want to coach you through this experience. And other times I just say, look, I'm going to cut to the chase. Let me help you out here. I'm just going to be your mentor right now. And I think that person looking out for you, I just wrote a blog post about it called Who's in Your Corner, that person looking out for you who really wants the best for you. And as they're going through their daily life, as you and I are going through our daily lives, and we're seeing, oh, Nadia asked me a question about that last week. Let me send that to her right now. I can do that in my weekly email, or I can do that in our Slack group, but I'm always looking out for my coaching peeps. And I think that especially when either you want to do better at your job, or you're new to your job, or you're new to your school, or you want to try a new career, new step in your career, having that person who's in your corner, you can't put a price on that piece.
I agree. It's that those connections that we have, and like I said before, I as a coach, I get a lot of it as well. It's very fulfilling, and it's to help people. So, that's why we do. People who coach, we want to see people succeed. And so, I feel like we have a way to a strategic, intentional, like I mentioned before, intentional opportunity for people to do that.
Yes. Thank you, Diana, so much.
You're welcome.
I think this is such an interesting conversation, and I know that we could continue talking about it, but I actually want to process some of the things you've already said and see if maybe we do a follow-up conversation, because I think there was a lot more in the earlier part that we can kind of dig into deeper. So thank you so much.
We've had some conversations. This is probably, we got into this one pretty deep this time. We've had kind of some conversations, and it makes me even think about other things as well. So definitely would love to talk more about it.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. See you soon.
Okay. See ya.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll know when we release a new video each week. Here at Eduro Learning, we want to help you coach better. To get you started, we've got some great resources to share with you right now. The first is a free digital download called 5 Strategies for Your Coaching Toolkit, and it's linked in the description box below. Plus, you can join our Facebook group, Coach Better, to connect with other instructional coaches around the world. The link is also in the description box below. If you're looking for even more learning, we are just about to start our next cohort of the Coach Microcredential. This academic year-long mentorship program includes 26 weeks of course content, a supportive network of like-minded participants who are coaches, and your own private mentor. Cohort 3 starts on April 28, 2019, and registration opens on March 4th. If you are ready to sign up right away, we have some great early bird bonus offers starting on January 15th, and spaces are limited, so please check it out. Are you ready to coach better? Get a preview to what you'll learn and see what past participants have to say at edurolearning.com/coach. And finally, if you haven't caught it yet, our weekly Coach Better Slow Chat on Twitter will help you build your professional learning network, and it's facilitated by 3 of our awesome The Coach participants, so you can see the types of coaches that you'll be learning with. Check out the link in the description box below. We hope that all of these resources are useful for you, and we'd love to hear what you think about them. If you have questions about coaching or guests you'd like to see featured, please leave us a comment, and we will do our best to make it happen. See you next time.